running. There we go. Getting close now. Must be close to bang on 1 o'clock, 12:59. Very close to kickoff time. I don't know why we're so punctual online in Sydney, and when we're in the live venue, it's we're hopeless. We are now recording, and this presentation will be made available later too, by the way. So hello and welcome to the last online Sydney Mining Club presentation. Very exciting news. Next week we go live with Paul Flynn from Whitehaven, another New South Wales story. But today I just want to, before I make some comments, I just want to welcome Tony McClure, who's also here in Sydney, elsewhere in Sydney. Tony, if you'd like to speak up, the camera will jump to you.
Hi, Jeremy. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah,
Julian, sorry. Yeah.
Now, little story I was just swapping with Tony when we're getting going is that Tony is now, by chance, personally, the owner of a little pub next to the Bowdens project called the Louis Pub. Now, here's a true story from when I was very young. Before I was even a geologist, I was a prospector. And while my mate's dad was in the Louis Pub doing what dads do, he and I were out in the field prospecting and looking around in a paddock, and we saw a big burnt patch. In that big burnt patch, there were all sort of glass stoppers and all that good old fashioned, all the good relics of the past. And I bent over, we were gold prospecting, my first piece of gold for the trip. And I bent down and picked it up and carried it inside very proudly, because it was actually a gold tooth in a half a set of false teeth that was sitting right in the middle of this paddock. True story. And actually we later on, of course, broke all the pink stuff away and had our little solid piece of gold. And the conclusion was that some old fellow had been had a big night and emptied his evening onto the back lawn, and it was later hit by the lawnmower and thrown into the paddock. So there you go. If you're the proprietor of that fine establishment now, Tony, that's a true story from my gold prospecting days when I was a kid. So
that's a great one. That's a great one, Julian.
Okay, now a couple of current affairs matters. One might have seen a lot about Andrew Forrest promoting that the diesel excise rebate be dropped. He hasn't made himself a lot of friends doing that. In fact, he's become quite made a target of himself, because this covers farms, mines, and agriculture, and it's not. I have actually a quote here from how this scheme originated. And the scheme's origins lie in the time when fuel excise revenue was earmarked to fund road construction. All diesel used off-road was exempt from excise. However, this exemption certificate scheme was abused. To halt the abuses, the Fraser government in 1982 budget announced that the exemption would be abolished and a rebate paid in its place for the off-road use of diesel in certain activities. So it is not a subsidy, and it is literally to relieve off-road diesel users of that the cost of having to maintain roads. So so Andrew Forrest, I'm sure you're listening, you have not made yourself popular by pushing that, and I see Tony shaking his head, unsurprisingly. On something else that's just come in, which is really nice. At the Sydney Mining Club, we like to give away the Eureka flag, the mining flag, as we call it. The Rule of Law Institute has just announced the release of resources that can be used to teach the story of Eureka into schools, and starts by saying, let's go back to 3rd of December 1954 to a field named Eureka. On that day, gold miners stood against colonial forces in a field at Eureka near Ballarat, Victoria. It has often been considered a tragic skirmish between miners and colonial government, but history shows us much more than that. The true reform of Eureka came from those who rose after the skirmish, those who wanted to see Victoria governed by good laws that recognised human rights and fair and equal representation. Maybe Dan Andrews is listening too. The miners wanted more than gold licence abolished. They wanted a voice in the making of laws that they were called to obey. They wanted an end to tyranny and heavy-handed policing. They wanted those in power to be held to account. They were able to achieve many of these rights and liberties soon after Eureka with the amended Goldfields Acts, the Electoral Act, Payment of Members Act, and the Victorian Constitution. These laws were the beginning of many of the important freedoms and rights we enjoy in Australia today, and became the beginning of representative democracy that ensures all Australians have a chance at a fair go. So it says a little bit, it says, sadly, many educators skip over Eureka now as it's not seen as politically correct or even too politically loaded, but it shows it is an absolutely vital story in our formation of our nation. And there, if you are interested, the Rule of Law Institute has a website, and on that website they have various materials that can be used by teachers and educators, including a lovely little printout that looks like this. And so that's why we hand out the Eureka flag, because it was the miners who were instrumental in making it so iconic. And it wasn't the CFMEU, who I can see dangling a flag out my window here on the 19th floor. So, okay, so we're now ready to start, Tony. I'll throw it over to you, and you're welcome to share your screen. You can take your time and tell us the amazing story of Bowdens. And I want to say, on behalf of everybody in New South Wales, we are so looking forward to another mine in this state.
Thanks, Julian. Great to be here. Is that screen now showing?
It is.
Great. Okay, good. There's a bunch of slides here. I won't go through all of them, but I'll touch on a few of them. But just a bit of background. The Bowdens Silver Project, which is located out near Mudgee, central New South Wales, about 3.5 hours from Sydney. It's originally discovered by CRA some time ago. It was then taken over by Silver Standard. Silver Standard, Rick Rule and Bob Quartermain and those guys took the project on many moons ago, and that was before Silver Standard became a production company. Indeed, this Bowden asset was the kickoff of Silver Standard, and Bob Quartermain and Rick Rule, their idea was really to take on silver assets, do some work on them, and then move them on. And that's exactly what happened. So they did a reasonable amount of work and sold it on to Kingsgate. Kingsgate did a bunch more work on it and started feasibility work and so forth. Kingsgate, we won't go into that story, but effectively the project got liberated through some of the mess that Kingsgate ended up with. So that's a bit of history. We got involved. We were particularly interested in not only the work that had been previously done, so outcropping silver mineralisation was always the target, but not a lot of work had been done underneath. So we wanted to look underneath and see if there's a porphyry system there, and see what feeder zones there might be, and the structural setting and so forth. And lo and behold, and not unsurprising, we've made other discoveries along strike and more importantly directly underneath. So I'll touch on where we are with that. This sort of deposit is very unusual. As everyone knows, we're Cannington in central Queensland is a large silver development, South 32. But apart from that, silver in Australia is pretty unusual. It's byproduct, lead, zinc, mining, gold mining, and elsewhere. There's a few small projects around New England area, New South Wales and southern Queensland and so forth, but they're typically small, high-grade historical operations, and some of them are being addressed. But the scale of Bowdens is very different and very unusual. So that's why it's classified as the largest undeveloped silver project in Australia, and one of the largest globally, and still growing. Just a little bit more background on the company. We've got a market capitalisation about 300 million at the moment. Well cashed up. We've got about $30 million in the bank. Put you on the map. Sorry, that map's a little small, but as I said before, 3.5 hours from Sydney, in the Mudgee district. So the Bowdens Silver Project's located about 26 kilometres east of Mudgee. We've got about 2,000 square kilometres under licence to go from the north of Golgong and down to Candos. Just to the north of us is the Ulan coalfields. So the pipeline, in terms of the history, we've when we got control over the project back in roughly 5 years ago, we inherited a wealth of information, and Silver Standard and Kingsgate had done a significant amount of work. It was all about us de-risking the project and completing the drill out and then moving into the economic equations. So drill out was complete for our initial resource assessment, and that added about 100 million ounces. So the resource now is, including zinc and lead as equivalents, is about 270 odd million ounces of silver and growing. That morphed through into the feasibility that was completed mid 2018. And GR Engineering and AMC and those guys completed that. And the environmental work is now coming to its completion. But the environmental impact statement was submitted last year. Now we're in that submission and Q&A process with government, which was basically almost complete. We expect that we'll have approvals through by probably mid 2022. So next year is a big year for us in terms of definitive engineering, financing and so forth to kick off the project. Just a bit of the timeline. So we're at the assessment end. All the submissions are basically complete. There's a bit more coming in, going in the next few weeks. But we will be in front of the Independent Planning Commission, hopefully in the second quarter of next year. Anyway, we're subject to that curious process, but that's just the way it is. This is something we like to talk about, and it's critically important for those in New South Wales. And we all know communities can be difficult at times, and to be quite honest, we inherited a project that was regarded as quite difficult within the community for one reason or another. We highlighted that issue even before we took over, and we invested a lot in that. And it's basically being having an attitude of open doors and so forth, and allowing people to see what we're doing, and getting into detail with people, and that's been a big success for us. It's not just one or two people in the community programs doing that. It's our whole staff are involved with talking to communities, other stakeholders, whatever. So where we are with our environmental impact statement, we've received roughly almost 80% local support, which is quite phenomenal. Indeed, Steve, the Minerals Council, Steve at the Minerals Council came out a while ago and said he's not aware of any other project in New South Wales that has had that amount of support. So we invested a lot in that, and we still do, and we view it as critical for these sorts of things. So we're delighted with what we've done there and what we've been able to achieve, and it's not just in the bag and moving forward. It's an ongoing effort. Let's talk a little bit about geology. So we're on the eastern limb of the Macquarie Arc. I'll qualify a bit of that a bit later because the Bowdens project is in younger rocks. We've done a lot of work with the University of New South Wales. So Ian Graham and his team, we've had PhDs and honours students and master students and so forth being involved and helping us out, and that's allowed us access to some of the high-tech stuff at the university. Macquarie University has also helped as well, but it's effectively proven that we are indeed the eastern limb of the Macquarie Arc, poorly understood. We, as I mentioned before, about 2,000 square kilometres we hold of that. Diagram, so Golgong in the north of us, you see these red, yellow dots here in the north are old gold mines, and this is, Golgong is an old gold mining centre. If you've ever been there, it's just a phenomenal town. It's like going back in time. If you wanted to film a movie there in a period piece, that's exactly where you do it, and a bunch have been done. But those gold mines, the last of those closed at the outset of World War I. And not a lot has been done up there at all since. Not a great deal of interest for us. It's some of it's deep lead material and so forth. But we will be getting up there in the not too distant future. But as we move south, we get into Ordovician rocks where we see copper gold mineralisation. We see a lot of skarn and outcrop. I'll talk about the Barabolar project very quickly at the end of the presentation, but further south we get into the younger rocks, being the Ralston Volcanics, which hosts Bowdens silver. All of that yellow area to the east of there is the Shoalhaven group, so that's the overlapping sandstones and coal seams, and that contact is basically right on our site. This is what we're drilling at the moment. So we're drilling underneath the open cut area, and we're expanding the resource. We're looking at a new resource out in the first half of next year, and that will be in an underground sense. What we've done so far has been primarily focused on the open cut. Where we're drilling now is particularly interesting. We've got our AGM tomorrow, and we'll have some further details of some of that more recent drilling announced tomorrow. Just going back in time again, CRA made the initial discovery. They did a little bit of drilling. Silver Standard then got hold of it, did about 40,000 metres. Kingsgate continued. We've completed about 60,000 metres and still going. We've got 4 rigs on site at the moment. So the bulk of that has been focused on Bowdens Silver Central and only a little bit of exploration outside of that. So it's still very much open from whether you're looking at Bowdens silver or prospects in the wider district. So sort of zooming into the mine area, the yellow again is the Shoalhaven group that drapes over the northern part, but to the south here, it's basically outcropping, and that lends itself to good economics and open cut sense. Indeed, the initial years of development are strip ratios less than 1 to 1. So outcropping mineralisation allows us to reach a bit further in terms of grade but yeah, we've got a lot more to say about that, and we've got an optimisation process that will happen next year, given that we've had a significant amount more drilling that's happened since the resource assessment back in 2017. Don't need to go into this. This is the site layout. So we'll be doing a 2 million tonne plant, 2 million tonne per annum plant that'll be solely producing out of an open cut that's located about 2 kilometres north of the township of Louis. Fortunately for us, we've got a big ridgeline in the way, so the residents of Louis won't see anything, and the effects on a small township are very much minimal. So this is what we've got submitted to the department at the moment, and as I mentioned, we expect to have approvals by somewhere in mid next year. We'll have a little bit more to say about, we've been working on optimising water and so forth, and we've got an announcement that will be presented at our AGM tomorrow, and it's basically some of the success of our optimisation processes in maximising or minimising capital expenditure and effectively optimising. When it comes to water, that's been always a topical issue, whether it's us or anyone else. But we've solved all of our water requirements, and we're self-sufficient. We have no issues with water. Some of the economics, again, you can read this at your leisure, but over the life of mine, 16 years or so, about 2 billion Aussie dollars in revenues. This is very much the initial open cut. It's got every opportunity to expansion. I generally say that 16 years is a mine life. However, I'll let my hat if this isn't still in production in 50 years' time. It's one of those ore bodies. Not that I'll be around in 50 years' time, but it's certainly growing. Everywhere we drill in and around Bowdens, there's more of it, and as we get deeper down, it's higher grade as well. Silver, a lot of you know, silver's sort of been the ugly duckling to gold. It's very much not that. Some of the technologies that are coming out are really tapping into the properties of silver. One being by far the best electrical conductor, and that's a fact. Another significant point about silver is that a lot of bacterias, when they touch silver ions kill bacteria. Unfortunately, not COVID, but anyway, that's why silver is used throughout water purification and so forth. But the driver going forward is very much in areas of solar panels and electric vehicles and so forth. There's more silver in electric vehicles than conventional combustion engines. The solar panel market, as an example, we saw, the Biden administration come out a few weeks ago saying that 45% of US's power is going to be generated from renewables. Whether that comes to pass or not, who knows? But they're big numbers, and the bulk of that's going to be is planned to be from solar panels. So there is a very, very significant growth market in solar panels going forward. Obviously, COP26 has raised some of those things. I think it's probably overinflated in a way where it's going, but certainly there's 10% of silver is now used in 10% of silver production is now used in photovoltaic cells for solar panels, and that's only going to increase. So the outlook's good for silver. Silver price, you got some of the larger commentators at the moment in terms of investment houses calling silver to $30. It's been there not long ago. It's coming off a base of around 14, 15, but we're definitely into the next silver cycle now, and some of those financial institutions are calling silver to over $50. So our strategy has been always about de-risking the project, and if that coincides with a better silver market, that'd be great, and that's exactly what's happened. I'll just chat a little bit about what's going on underneath Bowdens, and this is something that's very topical. And as I mentioned, we're going to be showing a little bit more on this tomorrow at our AGM. But effectively, you see that yellow line there. That's the open pit outline there. These three zones here is where we're drilling at the moment. This northwest zone, Gean zone, directly under the open pit, so directly under the current reserve. We've got 4 rigs on site drilling these areas out. We will be announcing shortly that we think that these 2 zones are in fact the one, and they're connected. Bandara zone, again, we'll have more information out on this tomorrow, but this is the 3rd zone we've been looking at. Very different mineralogically wise, because these 2 northern areas are very much what we see above in the open cut area. This area here, again, it's not far from the current reserve, but we start to see less silver as we get a bit deeper in that part of the area. more higher zinc and lead, but more importantly, we see gold coming into the system, and some areas are, sort of averaging 0.5 gram. Some areas are a bit higher than that, but so we're drilling that intensively right now, and that's the success of that has been so encouraging for us. We've already embarked on a scoping study for a potential underground operation. So ordinarily you complete your drill out and then resource assessment and then offer the scoping study, but the success of the drilling is clearly showing that there's a large underground system that we can tap from underground, and hence we want to save a bit of time and get going on breaking the back of the scoping study. So first half of next year we'll have results on that. That's obviously quite separate to the open cut and what was submitted to the department. And obviously, scoping study will morph through into feasibilities and so forth, but that doesn't affect the current approval submission and approvals. And this sort of looking into section views. So, we talk about the northwest zone, some good results in there. We're getting, it's nice to have a deposit where you, instead of talking about grams, you're talking about ounces. So you're getting zones of, sort of 20, 30 ounces gram silver. Which is great to see, much higher grade than what we see higher in the open cut area, and the Argean zone on the other side, on the north, and then looking at this where we're drilling at the moment is the connection between the two, which is almost assured. So more work to come out on, more information and results to come out on that very shortly, and obviously that bodes well for the scoping study. Then we look in long sections. So again, the open cut to the left of the screen is north, and so this is the northwest zone that I was just talking about. Argean is behind there, so you can't see it on this section, and then this Bandara zone, which has got gold content. We've just this dacite intrusive appears to be very important. This was never mapped before. Some of the old drilling got into it, and that was failed to be recognised. It was thought to be exhalative volcanics, but in fact it's an intrusive, and obviously and probably very important to this mineralisation. So lot to unwrap on that as we go forward. We still feel that we're on the cusp of something more significant. Obviously, we're delighted with what we see directly underneath. But some of the deeper drilling, as we get down further, we get more gold in the system. We start to see copper in the system. We've confirmed that there's we're part of a larger porphyry system, and that's back to some of the work we've been doing with the University of New South Wales, but there's still a lot to go. When we talk about this deposit at the moment, the open cut area is 270 odd million ounces. It won't surprise us if we're hitting 400 or 500 or well above that as we go forward. So that's that's sizable in anyone's language when it comes to silver. So as I mentioned, we've got the scoping study happening. We've got 4 rigs on site drilling away. So we're geologically we're well positioned, and we're cashed up and so forth. So we'll have a lot more work. But I think the success of it is, and the success demonstrating for us to make a decision to go straight into a scoping study is obviously highlighting what we think of it. I'll just quickly mention, Julian, if we've got a couple of minutes, is just to the north of us, and this is perhaps some of your old stomping ground when you were doing your honours thesis. So this is about 10 kilometres north of Bowdens, and this is an area that was Anglo were involved in back in the 1970s, and virtually no work was done, has been done out in this area since. When we got involved, we saw these little prospects. You see those little dots there that highlight old mines and so forth, lead zinc mines, molybdenum mines, gold. We see outcropping skarn, a lot of it mineralised. You see this bluey colour here. That's about 7 kilometres of an outcropping skarn that's copper gold, low grade. However, very little work has been done of that. When we got involved, we did a remapping program. We flew magnetics and used other tools, and discovered it was part of a much bigger system. These are all the rocks. So this is the true Lachlan fold belt, Macquarie Arc. So same age and structural setting and so forth is what we see on the western limb of the Macquarie Arc. So we're very excited about that. We started a exploration program doing some drilling out here. Then COVID hit. We pulled back with COVID, given we're on other people's properties and so forth, and we concentrated on our freehold down at Bowdens. But we're just about to open back up in there. So early in the new year, we'll be drilling again, particularly off to this western side. We see a lot of encouragement here, although we see outcropping skarn and mineralised. Over this way, we see big, broad gold anomalies. Mount Lau is an old porphyry quarry, so demonstrating that we're on top of the porphyry system. So yeah, this area is ripe for a pretty serious exploration program where we're rolling up the sleeves and getting back into that next year. Elsewhere, so the centre of our universe, obviously found the silver up around the Mudgee area, but we've got this, we've highlighted an area down the south. So this is south of Orange. So there's Cadia there, McPhillamys, and we've had specific interest for some time in this area. The Tuena project was focused on here, and a little while ago we took out more acreage. Indeed, some acreage adjoining McPhillamys. So an exploration prospect, I think for those in New South Wales, we well know. So, McPhillamys and north of there is well understood, but to the south here, on the Copperhania thrust system is still very much, we've been drilling old gold workings that haven't been drilled since that work was done, over 100 years ago. So, it's quite amazing to see. We all think that New South Wales is reasonably well combed over, but in some of these areas, it's still in its infancy. And if you're in Western Australia, those areas would have been drilled out many moons ago. So anyway, so we're sort of scratching our heads what to do with this project now, but certainly it warrants a lot of work. And as you can appreciate, our focus is up at Bowdens. So we might look at other opportunities down in the south. Julian, I might leave it there if that
great
suits.
Fantastic, Tony, and thank you so much. I will just for we've got quite a good number of people watching and inviting them now to join in. If you're not familiar with how this Zoom, we will see if you hit that button. Then also over on you can hit a chat line, so where it says chat, and you can put questions there. Raising your hand, I think, can lead to you asking a live question, but it's certainly, you're welcome to put any questions you like to Tony. We will be asking Tony back next year. This is just to give us some content as we're on the tail end of our horrendous lockdown situation. We're going, and while we're just waiting to see if anybody has questions, I just want to mention a couple of things too, if I may, Tony. Mining Club Matters. Paul Flynn is on next week. That will be our first live presentation back. Tony, I'm sure you'd love to come and listen to a New South Wales coal mining story, just to understand how positive doing silver in New South Wales is going to be. But certainly Whitehaven's on its way back from a very difficult time through COVID, and Paul Flynn is an amazing, accomplished managing director, and we look forward to. So book now. Tables are apparently flying out the door. So if you're interested in being at our first and Christmas Sydney Mining Club, hop on and book, because it'll be a sellout, I'm sure. Our sponsors, I would like to, as usual, just take a moment to thank AME Group, Barabolar, Australia. Great, they're our two principal sponsors, and they've done a magnificent job, and we love them for it. The Association of Mining and Exploration Companies, who I'm sure are speaking with Tony, the ANZ Bank, APM Graphics Management, CRU, the analysts, Deloitte, Empire Energy, the shale gas company in the Northern Territory that's currently drilling. Office is right behind me, in fact. Geo's Mining Minerals Consultants, which is, of course, Tom Bradbury and his colleagues. Hetherington Title Services, who do an amazing job right across Australia. New South Wales Mining Minerals Council, you mentioned Steve Galilee, and he, of course, is right across the New South Wales Minerals Council is right across this project. Research as a Service, which is by Finola Burke. The Sydney Stock Exchange, and of course, starting with a V and coming at the end, but one of our longest and best and most faithful sponsors, Veritas, Bryce Reynolds, thank you. So I'm just going to go back and have a look now if anything's come in. James Morrison has a raised hand, which I think I just go to. Okay, so how do I get James to come up? To be honest, he's got a raised hand. Let me just see. Maybe one of the problems we've had too is that sometimes we don't have a microphone on the other end of the person speaking. It should be an open line now. Let me see. I can't see James coming up. James, you might like to write, just type your question in the meanwhile, and I'll pick it up on the chat line. Either that or Carol is listening in. Maybe she has some suggestions about what might be happening with the question of James Morrison. So in other matters, and while that's getting resolved, our dear patron Trevor Sykes has been unwell. He's been in hospital. He was operated on about 2 weeks ago and is now home recuperating. Trevor, really hope you're watching. We love you. You're a national treasure, and speedy recovery. Look forward to having you back. Also available from last week is the amazing presentation by Mark Cont'd, which was, I think anybody who saw it was just, the leadership of the global mining industry could not be better served than by our friend Mark Cont'd. Really worth having a look at. Next year. Oh, by the way, this is next year, we'll be going back live next year and alternating with the live presentation and then the evening, the lunch presentation in the evening, so we alternate one lunch, one evening, one lunch, one evening as the months go by. Okay, so we've solved the technical problem. And we have a question from somebody else, from Sam Hsu, and he says, is production in 2022 available for export order? There you go. That sounds like somebody hawking after your silver already, mate. I think Sam Hsu might be a little bit ahead of the game there, but I think you'll be building you'll be going. Did you say you're going through the Planning Assessment Commission next year?
Yeah, so that'll be round about mid next year. We think they'll all be said and done. This is other issues raised, but I think we're through the bulk of it. And as I mentioned before, the water side is always, the most important thing out of everything, and that's all solved. But from a production point of view, we're saying 23, 24. So once we have approvals and finances set and so forth, it's an 18-month build. In terms of what our products are, we've got a lead zinc concentrate, which is likely to be roaded and then railed to Port Pirie in South Australia. So that's the primary product, and then there'll be a zinc concentrate as well, which can go down to Hobart out of Newcastle or Port Botany, or down to Tasmania, or anywhere in Asia or anywhere else for that matter. So It's a the silver lead product is a good product. Obviously, the zinc product is minority to the values in the silver, of course.
So to answer Sam's question, no, there won't be silver for sale in 2022. The interesting thing is there is a paper on this, Tony, about Jacob Riebeck about 25 years ago described how this effect in New South Wales had taken place. I mean, if you think about it, you know, the one of the largest gold mine in Australia, Acadia, is just, you know, it's even closer to Sydney than Bowdens. And there was a halo effect that Jacob describes where these early explorers who were always just desperate to go for another horizon and were racing, they actually travelled out, they left a halo in the middle. By the time they settled down, they had left this sort of halo. And by the time modern drilling and exploration methods had caught on, they were already in Queensland and Western Australia and other places. And there was a sort of a halo where, you know, the most unlikely thing where closer you are to Sydney, the less explored the ground is. And, you know, your discovery example, you know, if that had been in Western Australia, it would have been in production 50 years ago. And the same with Cadia. So there is definitely, and that's why we're seeing now in your other piece of land on that Cadia trend, we're seeing such a lot of amazing exploration going on there and some pretty hot results coming out as well. But yeah, so it's so I have got that paper by Jacob Riebeck. The other thing he pointed out was in the old days, people used to think along the lines of gold was in a hill. But most likely now, with modern appreciation of how alteration works, you know, hydrothermal alteration, the mineralised areas are the most depressed and low-lying. So that was an area that they didn't tend to prospect back there in that period too. So it was a really, the Department of Mineral Resources reproduced that paper. I wrote it with him, and but it was, I think they handed out 10,000 copies of it across New South Wales. But it certainly explains. It explains how things got overlooked.
Oh, and Julian, I think it's even more topical nowadays. We certainly see a lot out of government on, yeah, we see this mess with, you know, the coal mining industry and so forth, and be nice to see the politicians say it as it is rather than just trying to, you know, fall in line with COP26 and so forth. But anyway, whatever the process is going forward, obviously coal's under pressure and pressure is going to ratchet up. I think that's clear, certainly in my mind, rightly or wrongly. But you know, I think there is a drive in the department, a drive on the politics side. I think the Nationals have been highlighting part of it is, you know, what's going to happen in the next, you know, decade or two? What's going to fill that gap? You know, we all know how big coal is for New South Wales, and you know, Newcastle is the largest export terminal in the world, and all that sort of stuff. We all know that. But what's going to fill that gap? And you know, there's more than murmurings on trying to open up this state further. I'm not saying it's going to, you know, cut red tape or whatever, or cut the process or whatever, but I think there's a lot of work that can be done to make it quicker. Independent Planning Commission process has been, you know, optimised to an extent. I think there can be more work done on that, but I think we'll see that there's going to be more focuses on, you know, developments like this and expansions of the cows and the Cadias and so forth to fill that gap. But a lot of work needs to be done because, you know, when we're hitting a couple of decades from here and coal mining is under further, you know, intense pressure, it's not going to be easy to fill that gap. Yeah.
Yep. Look, I think that was, if I would have been far less polite because I'm not a participant in the New South Wales industry, but I do know that, you know, every attempt that they've made to cut red tape and streamline it, certainly they had a big campaign started about 10 years ago, and I think they virtually doubled the amount of red tape while they were trying to cut it. So, you know, and I was pretty critical about it, and obviously I haven't backed down, but you're always worried that if you say things like this, you're going to get some bureaucratic reprisal against you. Well, I don't have anything in New South Wales, so I'm free to say these things. Yeah, no, definitely, you know, and it's part of this kind of yeah. I mean, it's a challenging time. Then what is amazing about the coal situation is the way that coal prices are taking off now. You know, they're really, you know, we're not quite, thermal's not quite at an all-time high, but it's very close to. And you know, there are, you know, Queensland's producing coal with its ears pinned back too, and so there are a lot of market forces, and, you know, COP26, whatever it's doing, you know, I think that you know, we just have to keep giving. We can't withhold our coal from our customers. You know, they need it. Whether they consume it or not is their responsibility. And I think there's a bit of a thing where they play that scope 2, calling scope 2 emissions, but actually scope 3 is actually somebody else's scope 2. You know, once you sell it to them and they consume it, that shows up on their scope 2 account. So I think so long as we, you know, sure, fair enough, people can manage their own emissions, but yeah, there's a lot of challenges. Nuclear's around the corner. We see the public perception on nuclear changing rapidly, but it's yeah, well, it's credit anyway to that you've got as far as you have. Here we go. Somebody has just posted the Rebec article here. And I might probably shouldn't try anything too precarious, but certainly that's available on our website, I think, or it will be. But it's quite a seminal piece in how exploration has changed. Tim McConaughey has a question. Now, how do we? Has he got his hand up, or how do we Q&A? Here we go. Here we go. Ground ownership. Are your nearest neighbours positive? Well, we know about the publican. You know, what actually, it's a good question, because from memory, you know, I noticed this getting around New South Wales, if you're in a soldier settler area and there's less squatters, and there are different vibes around New South Wales. And of course, Mudgee's nearby and a lot of grape growers there, and they did actually, and we've had this is a good question, Tim, because there was the Bylong Valley project of KEPCO was actually knocked back by the Planning Assessment Commission. So it'd be nice if you could, I think Tim's question is, how would you characterise the people and the society of rural society around where you are?
Yeah, no, so this is a good question, and you know, I think just from an agricultural point of view, so you know, Bylong had you know, specific issues with in its competition against agriculture and so forth, and you know, that's, you know, and then further north from there, you've got the Hunter Valley Central, in a way, where, you know, you've got horse studs and wineries, and competing against that sort of agriculture can be very difficult at times. Where we are, and this is, you know, a function of the Rylstone volcanics, which are a type of volcanic which doesn't lend itself to good soils. So we're well outside of that. Once you get closer to Mudgee, so this is, you know, 25 kilometres away, you start to get into limestone areas where the vineyards are and so forth. But where we are, it's pretty ordinary ground. It's cattle, it's sheep. You know, I didn't realise this before we got involved, but our functioning farm out there is sheep, and it's a fine wool area. But you produce fine wool from the beast being stressed, and that's stressed from the you know, the lack of feed, or the, you know, the poor, and which is reflective of the poor soils, which is reflective of the volcanics underneath. So we're in a pretty in the valleys. It's better agriculture. It's better primarily cattle. But up in the hills where we are, it's you know, we don't have that competition with agriculture. From a local community perspective, you know, we own you know, the freehold in and around Bowdens, so that's been something that dates back to the previous owners and so forth, and we've more than doubled our footprint out there. So that's we're good in that perspective. So we have no significant issues there. The general media community, there's a few people who carry on and you know, they got their own agenda or whatever. But you know, as I mentioned before, that slider popped up. We've got close to 80% local acceptance. Now that's not, you know, a global acceptance or a Australia-wide acceptance. That's local acceptance at that level. So you have a lot of people who are non-agriculturalists locally, who work in the coal mines. They've got an hour's drive away, whatever. They're dying to see us happening. But when you get down to Rylstone and Candos, so Mudgee's flourishing, of course. It's booming. It's tourism, and the coal mining it generates about, you know, half of the revenue for the LGA there. So it's critically important. That's just 3 mines. But when you come out our way, we've got Candos and Rylstone, which, you know, Rylstone is okay, but you get to Candos and it's a very difficult area. And they were specifically relying on Bylong getting up, and that was their closest significant town. But Bylong has been in demise for some time, with cement factory closing down and other businesses. Centennial Coal's operation nearby closed down some time ago. So Candos is down and out indeed. Just to give you a measure of that, you have, for every family in Candos, 50% of the families, you've either got one parent or you've got two parents, but 50% of them are on the dole. It's one of the lowest socioeconomic towns. So we got local townships which are crying out for developments. And obviously with Bylong being knocked back, all eyes are on us. We don't pretend that we solve all those issues, but we make a big dent.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, it's definitely the Planning Assessment Commission is, yeah, it has been streamlined, but it's, you know, I'd argue that second guessing all of those government departments. So every department does its assessment, you know, as faithfully and bureaucratically as they possibly can in New South Wales. And then after all of that, you then have to go and toss a coin with the Planning Assessment Commission. I think it's a pretty steep ask for an explorer developer, but personal view.
Yep.
How are we looking here? We've we can. Okay, so I think we're good on that. As I say, there is a, and I'm just bringing it up now as we speak. I might be able to share a screen. Oh, I can actually. Yeah, here is the. I'll try and bring this up for everyone's benefit, just so you've seen it. And it is a. This is the piece with Jacob Rebeck in it. So now I'm going to test my skills and do screen sharing here, and there it is. So it's quite written quite some time back. It's I think it was in 1992. But if you look at that map below, look at the density of gold occurrences in New South Wales. It's actually the highest density of gold occurrences anywhere in Australia, and all within that halo. And there's a series, a really nice series of, I don't know, probably, oh, there we go, magic. Yeah, and they're all great quotes from Jacob, and Jacob, of course, was then CRA. In fact, he probably was there behind this discovery. He might even be listening. But there he is in his red shirt, holding forth. So, okay, well, I'm going to work out how to get out of screen sharing now, and there we go. Very, very keen to have you back next year and follow the progress of your project, Tony. We
be delighted.
Yeah, no, it's a, you know, I mean, it's just one of course, you know, with the precious metals too, there's a sort of you know, in the mineral sector, anything that happens in the precious metals area is always a bit of a party starter for other minerals and other people to go and explore it. So it's always got that sort of sex appeal that gets people exploring in the district. And as I said before we came on screen, in my thesis area, there is a there is a little gossan out there that I did assay in my thesis, and we must together go back. I don't know how many. If you have a discovery out of it, I don't know how many cartons of beer it's going to cost you, but so it's half a truckload or something like that.
We'll meet you at the Louis pub.
There you go. You'll find the other half of those false teeth. See if there's another gold tooth in there. On that cheery note, a great presentation. Really nice to hear how you're going. I think everyone on this call will be really right behind you, and we look forward to tuning in again next year. And hopefully we might even see you next week and come along and see Paul Flynn here in Sydney and join in a bit of Christmas good times. And yeah, it'll be very exciting to be back. And on that room it's going to be buzzing. So hope to see you and everyone else.
Good, Julian. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tony. Bye.
Bye.